everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And yes, folks, we are going back to the FDA Executive Summary for April the 24th, 2014. Now, I got to take a minute here because it looks like it set me all the way back at the beginning and didn't really hold my spot. So please bear with me just a minute so I can get back to where we were. Perfect. Okay, before we go getting into anything, just a few real quick things right off the bat here. First of all, as always, folks, we will be including the link here for this massive document, as well as a link to the Close to Judge Rotenberg Center petition there in the description. Also, some of the things we cover when we are covering the JRC are disturbing, including detailed descriptions of torture, as well as some other unsavory things. So, if you have young ones present, please watch these videos with headphones. Also, if I butcher any scientific terminology or stumble over my words, I do apologize. Today, I do have a little bit of an extra excuse. As I just got off of training, I've been trying to make everything as timely as possible. So this is going to be a relatively short video, a little bit shorter than it would ordinarily be. That being said, without further ado, today we are going over 5.1.3, which is risks identified through FDA literature research. Articles were reviewed for reports and or assessment of risks. We'll see Table 4 in a minute. 28 studies were identified. Adverse events were reported in one prospective case control trial and one retrospective chart review of 60 patients. 26 case report series encompassing 66 subjects also provided an assessment of AEs, while 16 other case report series did not mention assessing AEs or the occurrence of AEs. One within subjects comparison, baseline versus treatment, of heart rate also made no mention of AEs or systematic assessment of AEs. Duker van der Munkhoff, 2007. So it's just kind of going over here some of the studies that they had covered, what they have found. I'm going to try not to commentate as much as usual, folks. I'm trying to make this timely here. Okay. As with the effectiveness review, the highest quality publication was a case control study. Duker says 2000 conducted a prospective case control study of 8 subjects receiving ESD. Again, that is the acronym for electric skin shock. For SIB, again, folks, that is self-injurious behavior, compared with 8 matched controls not receiving ESD. While there was no systematic report of AEs by subject, the authors mentioned that a few problems that may be encountered during the often extended course of treatment are that the individuals may adapt to the intensity of the electrical stimulus. It's kind of like, folks, with medicine when you become accustomed to it and therefore it starts working, so they have to increase the dosage. Basically, they're saying the same thing here. Unfortunately, even with torture, if you find yourself used to it, you begin to build up an endurance to it. That self-restraint may emerge or may intensify, that individuals may show SIB at lower intensities that eventually results in tissue damage. We're talking about the burns here like you've seen on Andre McCollum's. One retrospective review of 60 subjects noted only one negative side effect. temporary discoloration of the skin that cleared up in a few minutes or days. And that, folks, is from Matthew Israel. So, of course, he's going to use a study that makes him look good, right? Israel et al., 2008. However, the authors also went on to clarify temporary emotional behaviors, a temporary tensing of the body, or attempts to remove the device or grab the transmitter noted during treatment were classified as immediate collateral behavior and were not considered adverse events. We've gone over this before, folks. This is where we have a bunch of idiots with medical degrees who try and tell us that muscles tensing up involuntarily due to shock is actually not what's happening. It's actually behaviors. And again, we have to wonder, folks, how the hell do these idiots have medical degrees? Moving on. Review of the case study series found that 26 articles, N equals 66 subjects, reported the assessment for the occurrence of an AE. 6 articles noted that AEs were not observed in their subject population. Okay, here is that table 4 that we were supposed to take a look at. See, MR, Down syndrome. Yeah, like I said, if they ever put that thing on my nephew, they'll find out what an autistic snap looks like and real aggression real quick. We'll just kind of look at these ages. This is insane. 14, 11. What's wrong with these people? 5 years old. God. 3 years old. That was back in 2004. 3 years old. Put them on them at 3 years old. Oh my God. Several articles examining the use of electric skin shock devices for aversive conditioning for other indications were also identified and examined for adverse events. One article, Kinney, Solomon, and Solomon, 1973, reported on a within subjects comparison of baseline compared to treatment with a shock in 5 subjects with obsessions and compulsions. Anxiety and psychotic delusions reported in 1 subject. Michelson, 1976, performed a case control study, 12 subjects and 24 controls, using an ESD device to treat alcohol dependence. The author states that the symptoms of the experimental repression, like headaches, restlessness, and mild dysphoria, were common and appeared usually within 3 to 4 days of treatment. Jesus. No side effects, my ass. Russell, 1970, performed a prospective study of 14 subjects to stop smoking, and the author reported that aggression towards cigarettes and mild transient depression were reported in 7 subjects. Gee, I wonder why. And another prospective study on 12 subjects using ESD on alcoholics stated that subjects reported discomfort from the shocks. Gee, you think? Discomfort. That's an understatement. The other identified articles did not report any adverse events, but it is unclear whether no adverse events occurred or whether adverse events were not tracked or reported. These included studies using ESDs for alcoholism. Ewing, 1984, Finn et al., 2001, Jackson and Smith, 1978, Smith et al., 1997, Wilson and Tracy, 1976, and Davison, 1974. Trichotillomania, Crawford, 1988, weight loss, Johnson and Carcoot, 1996, compulsive eating, Widgsing, 1973, smoking, not and Delunt, 1991, cerebral palsy, Sachs and Mayhill, 1971, and for inappropriate sexual behavior after traumatic brain injury, Jen Morris et al., 2012. In addition to publications with specific information regarding AEs, 12 reviews containing no new clinical information examining AEs associated with aversive conditioning in general or aversive conditioning using ESDs were identified. These included Azrin and Holtz, 1966, Balsam and Bondi, 1983, Bachman, 1972, Berkowitz, 1983, Butterfield, 1975, Carr and Levis, 1981, Corbett, 1975, Craven, 1970, Lerner and Vorden, 2002, Lickstein and Schriebman, 1976, Logan and Turnage, 1975, Myers and Evans, 1989. Balsam and Bondi, 1983, conducted a literature review of the negative effects on aversive conditioning devices in general, i.e., not specific to electric skin shock devices. Operating within a primarily behavioral concepted model, they note numerous potential adverse events, including emotionality, aggression, general behavior suppression, inflexible responses, escape, avoidance, aggression, generalization, specificity, correct responses not taught, and negative molding. Gee, you think? And that was back in 1983, folks. This is all stuff Israel and all these people had access to. But they know better, right? Lickstein and Schriebman, 1976, conducted a literature review specifically examining reports of using ESDs on autistic children. They identified 12 articles and noted positive as well as negative effects of treatment. 8 articles reported positive effects, while 7 articles reported negative effects. 5 articles reported both positive and negative effects. Positive effects were discussed previously in section 5.1.2. Negative side effects included fear, quiet, sullenness, aggression, crying, shivering, decrease in happiness, contentment, dependency, substitute SIB, and aversion to treatment device. Again, that's back in 1976, folks. So he would have had access to this before he would have even created the devices. And that was on a supposed skin shock machine that is not near as powerful as the GED. There's the table that we'll take a brief look. I'm going to see how far this goes. Okay, we don't have that much longer. Forgive me if I go through this next part real quick, folks. Some reviews note that when skin shock devices are not designed and applied appropriately, adverse consequences such as burns, tissue and nerve injury, cardiac arrhythmias, respiratory failure, and even death if electrodes are placed transathorically. The most serious potential adverse events appear to be correlated with higher intensities of electrical stimulation greater than 100 MA through the heart. Craven, 1970, Butterfield, 1975, Logan and Turnage, 1975. However, no reports of nerve injury, cardiac arrhythmias, respiratory failure, or death have been reported in the literature for the use of ESDs for aversive conditioning. Most studies which identify a current for aversive conditioning have reported using about 5 MA, and it is recommended that the electrode pairs be placed on a single limb to avoid risks associated with the stimulation of the heart. Butterfield, 1975. Yeah, if I had taken a Cardia, that crap would have killed me. It's not a joke. Most of the reviews acknowledge the possibility of negative emotional reactions such as fear, avoidance, aversion, anxiety, and depression. Balsam and Bondi, 1983, Tanner, 1973, Logan and Turnage, Corbett, 1975, Lickstein and Schreibman, 1976, Myers and Evans, 1989, Lerner and Vorden, 2002. Again, guys, they would have had access to all this data, and they're going to try and convince me that it's not torture? Okay, Karen. The other group of possible adverse events noted in some reviews included retaliation, increased aggression, or substitution of one injurious behavior for another. Balsam and Bondi, 1983, Lickstein and Schreibman, 1976, Berkowitz, 1983, Myers and Evans, 1989, Learman and Vorden, 2002. 2 reviews concluded that ESDs for aversive conditioning is not associated with any significant adverse events. Carr and Levis, 1981, Bachman, 1973. Yeah, that's a load of shit. Moreover, Lichtenstein and Schreibman contended that physical discomfort and emotional reactions are required in order for the treatment to be effective. You enjoy torturing people. Okay, we want to hurt them. If we don't hurt them, how are we going to control them? If we don't abuse them, they won't listen because they're too stupid to understand. That's what I'm hearing there. That's what I'm hearing. The heroes of the Judge Rotenberg Center, everyone. Therefore, they argue that these effects may be considered indicators of main effects of treatment rather than unwanted side effects. That's because you're fucking monsters. In summary, AEs from the case series reports, as well as case control study and retrospective review, were categorized into the following categories: anxiety, 6 reports; fear and aversion and avoidance, 6 reports; substitution of other negative behaviors, 5 reports; burns and other tissue damage, 4 reports; depression and crying, 4 reports; pain and discomfort, 3 reports; neurological symptoms, 1 report; malfunction, 1 report; other negative emotional reactions or behaviors, 11 reports. Because if we don't mentally scar you, then the treatment's not working. God. This list of AEs identified in the published literature in absolute terms may appear to be relatively modest in terms of severity and frequency of occurrence. However, it is important to note that the literature suffers from a number of limitations. As stated in the review of benefits, there has been virtually no systematic investigation of ESDs for aversive conditioning for SIB and/or aggressive behavior, and by various reports, only a very small number of patients are subject to its clinical use. The bulk of articles identified in the searches have been case reports series, employing retrospective review of clinical information. In addition, the majority of the articles were published over 40 years ago, and as such did not adhere to current research or reporting standards, particularly with regard to AEs associated with ESD use. No articles described employing a systematic assessment of AEs, and many did not state if attempts were made to assess AEs or not. Any attempts to assess AEs, particularly psychological AEs, may also have been hindered due to the difficulty of some subjects, intellectually disabled, to report such effects. I call bullshit, but whatever. For the reports of AEs that do not exist, many were published during a time when conceptions of disease and pathophysiology, particularly psychiatric pathophysiology, differed significantly from our current understanding. As a result, pathological process may have been interrupted from a different perspective. Certain currently accepted disease processes, acute and post-traumatic stress, may not have been recognized, and certain symptoms, AEs, may have not been accurately identified or reported. It is also important to consider the possibility of bias against reporting AEs. As previously noted, the majority of articles, all but 3, did not define a systematic method for assessing AEs. In a review by Carr and Levis in 1981, they concluded that there was no evidence of adverse events associated with ESDs for aversive conditioning. However, they went on to opine, in light of the intrusive nature of shock treatment, it is puzzling that so few negative side effects have been reported. In interpreting the existing literature, we might be wise to consider the possibility that some investigators have been predisposed to see only positive side effects. Maybe like Matthew Israel. Potential bias against adverse event reporting might also be present in the article presenting retrospective review of the largest group of individuals, 60, receiving ESD for aversive conditioning. The review noted only one negative side effect, temporary discoloration of the skin that cleared up in a few minutes or days. Israel et al. 2008. Bullshit! I saw those pictures, Israel. You're full of shit. However, temporary emotional behaviors, a temporary tensing of the body, or attempts to remove the device or grab the transmitter noted during treatment were classified as immediate collateral behavior and were not considered adverse events. Israel et al. 2008. You're so full of shit, you monstrous bastard. Moreover, in 66 patient case histories submitted by the named group to the FDA, no AEs across all patients were reported. No systematic methods for short-term or long-term AE were defined. Therefore, while systematic literature review represents the most rigorous evaluation risk of AEs associated with ESDs, these results should be interpreted cautiously and in the context of other information. Basically, it's saying for all those that are reporting all these favorable results, they're either from 40 years ago, or it's basically insinuating that people like Israel will only report all the positive results and then make offhand comments the few times they mention the negative, which pretty much sums up everything that we just covered today. Usually I go a little bit more in depth, but to tell you the truth, folks, I am exhausted. I want to get my jammies and detox and watch anime and eat some dinner. So I'm going to go ahead and close out for this afternoon. Now, as always, folks, we don't get that many views on this channel. The few that we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.